You're listening to Systemic Era Podcast. The failure was designed.
Humiliation. Young martyr voters explain why they're ditching Trump based on an article by Matilda. Trump's young voters are not disillusioned. They are late. A New York Times focus group found young Trump voters describing his second term as humiliating, corrupt, unaffordable, and aimed at the already well-off. That is the surface. The deeper fact is simpler. They helped hand institutional power to a man who uses it exactly as advertised, and now they are reacting to the consequences. Power was never hidden. Trump holds the actual power here. He won the presidency, he sets the agenda, and his administration owns the outcomes. The focus group's language about reactive policymaking is accidentally accurate. He is not solving problems so much as generating them and then moving around the wreckage. That matters because too much political coverage treats disappointment as if it were a mystery of tone or communication. It is not. A president who governs for image, wealth, and loyalty will produce governance that serves image, wealth, and loyalty. Affordability is not a mood. The young voters in the source are describing material damage, wages that do not stretch, work that does not translate into security, and a sense that the rules no longer work for ordinary people. One voter says he can save exactly $120 per paycheck. Another says people working 60+ hours a week still cannot make a dent in cost of living. That is not fake frustration. It is the measurable failure of a political project that promised relief and delivered pressure. Trump did not stumble into this. He ran on a political style built on grievance and performance, then produced a government that cannot or will not make life cheaper for the people who bought the pitch. Corruption is the operating system. The most revealing line in the source is the complaint about a high level of corruption and a lack of transparency. That is the right diagnosis, even if the voter offering it frames it as disappointment. Corruption is not a side effect of the administration. It is one of its core methods. The article makes clear that even some supporters now see a government that feels personalized, opaque, and tilted toward the wealthy. That is not an accidental drift from the campaign. It is what happens when political power is organized around self-protection, social hierarchy, and elite reward instead of public obligation. The framing is too gentle. The weakness in the reporting is not the facts. It is the emotional center. A focus group of young Trump voters can be useful evidence, but it also risks turning perpetrators into the main characters. The story becomes their humiliation, their buyer's remorse, their disillusionment. Meanwhile, the people who never had the luxury of believing Trump was on their side are laughed out. Workers who could have predicted this, immigrants targeted by his machinery, communities forced to absorb the damage, and voters who were never fooled do not get the same attention. The real political story is not that some Trump voters feel let down. It is that his coalition keeps demanding sympathy after helping normalize harm. The pattern is familiar. This is what authoritarian politics does in its soft phase. It sells dominance as competence, cruelty as honesty, and elite capture as anti-elite rebellion. Then, when the bills arrive, it asks supporters to interpret the wreckage as a glitch or a betrayal of the original promise. That is the scam. Trump's young voters are discovering that work hard, get ahead was never the governing principle. Power was. Image was. Loyalty was. The people now calling it humiliating are finally naming a system that was humiliating everyone else from the start. What this really shows. The deeper lesson is not that Trump's Gen Z support is cracking, while the source says his approval among Gen Z has plunged to -45. The lesson is that democratic politics cannot be built on hoping bad faith actors will eventually behave responsibly. Institutional power given to corrupt, self-regarding leadership does not reform itself under pressure from regret. It has to be opposed, stripped of legitimacy, and replaced by politics that treats ordinary material life as the point rather than the slogan. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to AlterNet for today's article. With the automatic voice of Riza, thanks for listening.